Hello and welcome. In today's episode we're going to discuss the insulation price and also the drywall price. So kind of two prices in one. So here's the insulation, and you know what, let me pause here for a second speaking and watch this real quick and then we'll get to it. Okay, now that I got that out of my system, let's get to it and I'll show you how I installed this insulation. So what I'm installing is R15 insulation. Even though I could have used R13, I decided to upgrade and go with 15. Here in Georgia, the part of Georgia, we can use 13. It's one of those funny situations where we're right on the border of 13 and 15. So all the building inspectors are okay with 13 over here, but I just decided to go with 15. And then on the ceiling, if you're curious, I put R38. And same thing, we can use 30, but I decided to go with 38, so a little bit better insulation. So just the theme of the channel is I always will show you prices and talk to you how this stuff works. The ceiling insulation, the R38, that is the best money you can spend on insulation. So the better insulation there you get, the better and efficient your home will be. So just keep that in mind. The sun will beat on the roof, so the more insulation you have in there, the better system insulation wise you have in there, your home will be a lot cooler and a lot more energy efficient. And I don't know if you're noticing here, what I'm also doing is I'm splitting the insulation on R15 to have half of it go behind the wire and half of it go in front of the wire. So by doing that, you don't create any pockets of dead air, and your insulation is not compressed, and you get the full value of the insulation. So just keep that in mind. If you have wires from an electrician when he runs his wires, don't just put the insulation on top of the wire, split it so half goes in back and half goes in front. I talked about that in the first episode, first series where I did the other house, the 930 square foot house. But this time I did the insulation myself. I didn't pay anybody to do it. So the crazy thing, I actually like doing it. I don't mind it one bit. It is definitely an itchy job, and it's definitely a sweaty job once you get to the ceiling, because that's where all the heat goes. So you sweat like crazy, but I don't mind doing it. And if you see the job that I'm doing, I like to be neat with it. That's just like how I like to do things. So I don't generate a lot of waste. If you look at the floor, and everything is pretty neat. And as I said, I wouldn't say I love it, but I do like doing it. And the other thing that you're noticing over there, the double studs, this is the interesting thing. So I'll talk about that, since a couple of you guys asked me to talk about, all the intricacies when it comes to building. The building inspector asked me to put in a solid 2x4 that goes from the floor all the way up to the ceiling. The way I had it framed before, it was only basically the 8-foot section, and then we framed the gable that you see here. Oh, look at that, perfect timing. But he wanted a continuous 2x4 that goes all the way from the bottom to the top. The funny thing is, with building and construction, things change all the time. So if you're going to be building a house for yourself, or if you're going to do this as a business, just keep that in mind, that things will change. A couple months ago, this was not an issue. If you read any kind of construction book, this is not an issue the way I did it before. But this is what the building inspector asked me now, a couple months later, to do. And you got to pick your battles, and I'm not about to argue with my building inspector. So if he wanted to do that, he wanted me to do that, that's the way we did it. So I had the guys come back and just basically frame it the way he wanted it, all the way from the ceiling, from the floor to the ceiling. So that's construction for you. Things change all the time, It's just part of the nature of the beast, as they say. And you have different regions, you're going to have different rules, to keep that in mind. I'm noticing some comments that people say, oh, you did this wrong, or the roof should be framed 16 inches on center. It all depends where you live, and it depends on the application. So all this stuff is in textbooks when you read, or if you're trying to take your contractor's license test. So it all depends where you are and what the rules are. Different parts of the country, you're going to have different rules. So just keep that in mind. That's pretty much anything in the world, isn't it? So you have different geographical areas, you're going to have different situations to deal with. That's just construction. There's nothing bad or good about it, it's just the way it is. And coming up here, I'm going to show you the drywall that goes on top of, obviously, the insulation here. I had footage of the whole interior walls because I insulated the interior walls. I had all that footage, and I was going to give you a nice little tour of the insulation, but I erased it by mistake because I put it in the same folder that my septic tank was in, that information. So that was a previous episode, so unfortunately I erased it. So here's the walls covered up with drywall. I'll walk through the whole house. It's gonna show you how this turned out. My drywall guy was available at a specific time, so I told him, come over now, do the drywall on the walls, and I will do the ceiling after you leave, because I didn't want to do the ceiling and then have to wait for him 2 or 3 weeks to get done with the other jobs. So I told him, don't worry about it, just come in, do the drywall, and I will do the ceilings insulation later. And you'll see me doing the insulation here in a bit of the ceiling. That's where it gets hot, so you'll see me get all wet and sweaty. But that's how it looks. What I found out after the drywall job, the finished job was okay, but the guy hanging the drywall, he didn't do a good job, to be honest. But that was after the fact, and it was already too late for me to complain about it. But it is what it is. Nothing in the world is perfect, including myself. So it was good enough, I guess, to to make it the way it has to be. But for the most part, I was happy with it. And I'll discuss all the pricing at the end of the episode, where it's time for the whiteboard, as I usually do. So there you go. That's the little closet framed up. You can see the kind of the kitchen living room area through that door. That's the storage I'm pointing to. So I didn't frame it all the way up to the ceiling. I had the guys kind of cap it so you can have storage on top of it. And that's the little closet. It's 2 feet wide, and here's a little area where you can put maybe I don't know, shoes or something. That's where the heating and air, the return is. So that's what that is. And like I said, I had all this stuff nicely insulated, that footage, and I freaking erased it. So I felt like an idiot. But that's the green stuff that goes in the bathroom. It's supposed to help with moisture. All the drywallers I talk to and contractors say it's a gimmick, that it got squished to pieces, that you can see that I'm pointing to. They say that green stuff is a gimmick. It really doesn't do anything. That's the water heater I'm pointing to. But it is what it is. I put it in there anyway. They cost like maybe $2 more a sheet. So it's not the end of the world. And you only have to do it in wet areas, so like the bathroom. So gimmick or not, it is done. It costs, like I said, $2 extra a sheet, so it's not the end of the world. That's my walk-in shower, basically, that I put in the other house that I built as well. And you see the plumbing here roughed out for the sink and the toilet and the water line coming in from underneath, because this house is on a crawl space. And as I talked about in the first series, I like to put windows in my bathrooms so you get some natural air coming in. Is there unnatural air? Never mind. So you got air coming in, and see, this job is very dusty and messy. That's why I wouldn't do drywall if you paid me. It's just I don't like it. I don't want to do it. But that's why I pay people to do it. So I provide a job for them. So that's the septic tank that was done, that I showed you in the previous episode. So let's get back to the insulation, and I'll show you how the ceiling is done. So this was the R38 insulation in the ceiling. Same thing. I like to cut these things and watch them explode. Kind of, I don't know, I'm weird like that. So I figured since I like it, I'll show it to you guys to see how this stuff looks, how it's packed. So it's kind of, look at that. I don't know, I must be a weirdo because I just like that. So here's me doing the ceiling insulation. So first what you do is you put in those baffles. They direct air from the soffit up to the ridge vent, and that gives the house a chance to breathe. I always do that when I do stick framing with 2x12 roof rafters. I just like my houses to breathe. I talked about that a couple of times. That gives any kind of condensation or any kind of funny business with moisture to just dry out and evaporate. So that's why I put those baffles. They're not expensive. I'll talk about that on the whiteboard time at the end of the episode, how much they are, but they are not expensive at all. But they have the channels of air that come basically from the soffit going up to the ridge vent. I talked about that when we were building the roof, how the ridge vent has holes on top of the roof basically, and that allows your house to breathe. So that's the baffles, and in a second you'll see me putting the insulation. So the job itself, it's not hard at all, but you gotta be careful and you gotta be precise so it's done right. And see me sweating basically up a storm, and that gets only worse when you're up there. But what I'm saying is, if you take your time, it doesn't matter who you are, man, woman, child, any of you guys can do this, and you can save yourself a lot of money. Because people don't tend to like doing insulation because it's a messy job, and like I said, you have to wear long sleeve shirts and pants, and you know, I put a hat on and a mask, so breathing is not fun with that mask, even if you get a good one. So that's why a lot of people charge a lot of money to do insulation, even that the job is very, very simple. It's just tedious, and I like to do a lot of things just at my own pace, even if I have my headaches or not. Even if I'm slow and I move as slow as molasses when I have my headaches or migraines, that still saves me money in the long run. So I don't have to pay somebody, you know, $1,000 or $2,000 to do insulation that I can do myself. So that's my whole approach to building. Some things that are manually labor intensive and you need more people for, I sub that out, so I hire people for that. But the easier things that I can do by myself and work by myself, I do it, and that saves me a lot of money. So that's my approach to building and construction. And then obviously all the money that I save by doing that, my homes are very reasonably priced, so it goes to the person who buys the house. So that's the other side, same thing, baffles in, and then the insulation goes on top of the baffles. So that's all that's to it. I mean, it's not complicated, it's not rocket science, anybody can do it. Just get yourself proper tools and just go to it. And it doesn't matter if it takes you a day or two or a week or 2 weeks. If you only can do it a couple hours at a time, you save yourself a nice chunk of change, you save money, and you know it's going to be done right if you do it yourself. So there's no, you know, hiding anything. So that's another benefit of doing something yourself. Not only just for the benefit of the financial benefit where you save money, but you know, insulation is done right. And I like to do things neatly, as you can see, and that's just how my brain works. My OCD kicks in, and that's just how I function. And that insulation, the R38 insulation, as soon as I put it up the next day, it was literally a night and day difference in how the house responded to the temperature changes and from the sun beating down on the roof. It is such a big difference. I'm a warm-blooded person, or cold-blooded, how is that? No, I'm not cold-blooded. But anyway, I like warmth, I don't like the cold. So, to be honest, I can actually live in this house. The way I build homes, I can live without heating, not heating, but air conditioning. I definitely need the heat in the colder times, but air conditioning, I could live without. And the house I'm in now, I barely run the air conditioner, to be honest, and I live in Georgia, so it gets kind of hot up here. And so there you go. That's what you're looking at. R15 in the walls, that was done for $270. The ceiling was $680 for R38. The baffles were $50 for all of it. They usually range anywhere between $1 and $2. It all depends what kind of sale you get. And then the drywall price was $1,700. So the total for the insulation that you saw was $1,000, and the drywall was $1,700 out the door. All I gotta do is just basically paint it, which will be the next episode. I'll be painting the drywall. So thank you very much for watching. I will see you guys next time. Take care.